Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to On the Verge. Today is Tuesday, April 28th, and we are back again. I want to start out by thanking everybody that's been following us and that continues to follow us. And please, if you like what we have to say, stay with us. And you can follow us on YouTube. You can follow us here on Facebook. You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. I don't know. There's like 13 other places you can find us. Again, we are your conservative voice of Southern Oregon, and we are a very conservative-oriented talk show. But we are not necessarily only conservative. We have some folks that come on here from time to time that are not, and we're concerned about what happens in the county and what happens in not just county but state government as well. I'm your host, Representative Osborne, and I will also say, if you do like what we have to say, stay with us. If you don't like what we have to say and you think we're too conservative, come down here and see Justin at Little Mill Media. He can put together a podcast for you that might fit your needs better than ours. And please, if you don't like what we have to say, don't watch us. Just turn us off and go watch something else that fits your liking. But we appreciate you watching us, and we hope you stay with us. I want to real quick go over a couple of sponsors tonight, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more later. But we have Becky Holmes Insurance, Andrea Williams Advocare, Bob Murray Trucking, Commissioner Chris Boyce, Senator David Brock Smith, Looking Glass Brewery, Twin Peaks Off-Road, that's my company, Little Mill Media, and Spider King Studio, which are about the only two people and two folks in town that actually do this kind of work. And we appreciate the fact that they're with us and they help us out. Tonight I'm excited to have a guest with us that I'm pretty sure doesn't need any introduction, but we're going to let him do it anyway. I'll go ahead and introduce our guest, and then we'll talk about my co-host here as well. But our guest tonight is Commissioner Tim Freeman, Douglas County Commissioner Tim Freeman. Tim, tell us just a little bit about who you are.
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me. Again, I'm Tim Freeman. I'm one of your Douglas County Commissioners. I grew up right here in Douglas County over in Oakland, Oregon, and for many years ran a business here in Roseburg and spent some time on the Roseburg City Council, and was one of the legislators that served in the district that Representative Osborne's in for a period of time before I came to the county.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us tonight. It's nice to have you on here. We've had Commissioner Boyce on here too, and hopefully sometime in the near future we'll get Commissioner Kress on here as well. Also, my co-host who's playing with his phone,
trying to get it to work right.
Trent, who are you?
Hi, everybody. Trent Drake. I am the Douglas County Republican Central Committee Chair and Virgil's campaign manager in this campaign season.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us. And this has been a great podcast. We've been now going into our second year, and we've had some really good guests on here. I'm excited tonight to have Commissioner Freeman with us because there's a lot of questions out there. This is campaign season. I don't think that's any secret. Everybody sees the signs out there and starting to see a lot of rhetoric that starts to happen this time of year. And there's been lots of interesting things. There's been some accusations. There's been some good comments, bad comments. We've had a couple of recently some forums. We just had a forum the other night with the Umpqua Valley Women's Republican Women, and you guys have had, I don't know what, 2 or 3 other forums on top of that.
We've had a few, yeah.
Yeah, and so tonight's not necessarily a forum, but we will take questions. So if you are watching tonight, and I see the numbers are starting to grow, please go ahead and comment your question. And if we have the time, we'll try to address them. We are going to go a little long tonight because I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be talked about. And frankly, a commissioner is really the only person that can answer some of the questions that I think we have tonight. So first off, Commissioner Freeman, I'd like to just have you touch on the state of the county.
Well, so Douglas County has a really great team of people that are elected to run the county. And a lot of people don't really understand how county government works. They understand they elect a sheriff, and they elect a DA, and a surveyor, and they elect a treasurer, and a county clerk, and an assessor. But they kind of think of the commissioners as maybe more like a city councilor or a legislator. But really what we're elected collectively to be the county administrator. So we administer the county, and basically what that means is we figure out the way to provide the services that the county provides to the public. And we literally are there every day. It's a full-time job plus, and as much as a lot of people think because we're elected we're the legislative branch of government, we are to pass ordinances, countywide ordinances, but this set of commissioners kind of believes there's enough laws and rules and government telling people what to do. We don't do many ordinances. So most of our time is spent in an administrative role, working with the almost 600 employees we have to provide services. Now, the sheriff, he hires his own people and manages his own staff. We're responsible for his budget and his facility and his IT and his HR and his fleet and all those things that support the work that he does. But he is statutorily in charge of his own staff, and justifiably so. That's the way it should be. Same with the district attorney. The other elected officials, there's a little bit of gray area there, but the commissioners historically and currently delegate all that staff control, hire, fire, manage to our elected officials, and we share that with them because it's important that when the public elects somebody that they really get to run their department.
So let me ask you this, and I'm pretty familiar with the job you guys do because I have regular contact with all three of you every week because what you do and it ties into what I do with the state. There are 13 candidates, I think, running for three positions, and I have to ask: has any candidate came to you specifically and said, "Hey, what is the job of a commissioner?"
No, and I'm very careful not to talk bad about my opponents. I think that is a mistake that a lot of people make. I've never done that in my campaigns, and I really don't want to do it tonight. But since you're talking in general, and there's 10 challengers, through these forums, it's very obvious that none of them have taken the time to really learn what it is the job we do day in and day out. They have some quick talking points and some buzzwords, but they really have not. Commissioner Kress the other day mentioned that he took him about 7 months to sort of study and learn what he was looking at getting into. Now, in my case, I had been Roseburg City Council president, I'd been a legislator, I had a lot of interaction with the commissioners, and I had probably a better idea what the job was. But if you would have asked me the first day what all the job entailed, I would have missed it by quite a bit. But it is really, what I tell folks is if you want to put it in a business framework, we are the chief executive officer, but not one of us, three of us together. So imagine a business if you had 3 CEOs or 3 owners, and all the decisions had to be made by the majority of those 3. That's how we function, and it's really it's relationship building over time that allows you to do that pretty efficiently. And we all knew each other before we became commissioners together, the 3 commissioners. At times we were customers of each other, but we weren't like friends. We didn't go to dinner. We didn't go do things together, and we were friends like business acquaintances and stuff. So through this work, I would tell you we're friends now, and we trust each other's judgment and decision making, and that really goes a long ways working as a team. We've had times in the history of our county where you saw commissioners that did not get along, and that is incredibly disruptive. You can see that around the state right now. Just one county south of us in Josephine County, they've had a lot of turmoil, yes, a lot of recalls, a lot of turnover. And because of that, a lot of their good staff has left. This professional staff that works for us, the turmoil is not good for them. They go find somewhere where they can feel a little more stable. But we've had that, in Curry County and Coos County, and Lane County right now has one of the commissioners and the county administrator in a lawsuit against each other.
Yeah.
You go over to Lincoln County, the chair of Lincoln County, he died. I'm sorry, I said the wrong word. He had turned into a female, so that person died and had some kind of operation as the chair of the Board of Commissioners. The next person that should have been the chair had previously been sanctioned by the other 2, and so he couldn't even go into the courthouse, so they haven't had a commissioner meeting in a long time. They're trying to wade through all that. So lots of turmoil if you don't get along. And that doesn't mean we always agree. And sure. I think it's important that people know that there's times when one of us will vote no, and traditionally it's usually me. And at first you realize, that it's okay. You can have a different opinion. You don't talk bad about the other guys, and whatever the board decision is the decision. And that's the body you're there representing. So once that decision's made, you own it and you move forward. After you do that enough times, you start to think, well, geez, maybe I've got it wrong and they've got it right. You start to trust each other. So we've developed that relationship, and not just the 3 commissioners, but the rest of the elected officials and our legislators. Yeah. And I said this at a meeting the other night. Right now in Douglas County, all of us that are elected officials came to this work because there was a vacancy. We saw that there was a need to step up and help, and we stepped into that vacancy, into that gap to try to help. And that's different than what some other folks are trying to do. And, they want to criticize and tear apart, and I'm not sure their motives are to help, but I again, one of the greatest things I learned in the legislature is not to impugn the motives of others. So I don't know what their motives are, but I do know the motives of the people that are currently elected, and all of us are there to help. And
well, and I think, in touching on that, and we've got a lot of other topics, but I do want to touch on that just a little bit, because what I hear from the majority of the candidates that are running against you, and I won't say all of them, and I'm not running in your race, so I can kind of say what I feel, but I hear a lot of negative comments, right? And it's like here, throw this against the wall and see if that sticks. And I think one of the things that we pretty well squared away the other night was the Jeep comment, right? And all four, the three commissioners and the sheriff all got Jeeps from George Soros or some ridiculousness. And I've known you for a long time. You and I have four-wheeled together. You and I have been to the sand dunes together a long, long time ago, and certainly long before 22 or whenever you supposedly got these Jeeps. I also have known Tom even longer than you and Sasha, and I remember that Jeep from back in the Looking Glass Playdate days.
Right,
I mean,
in the 80s,
that was like when I was like 16 years old. So
Right.
when I first saw that, I was like, I would be so embarrassed to make an accusation like that. Aside from the fact there's no evidence, it's just nonsense. And so you guys had a chance to kind of talk about it the other night, but I just want to spend a few seconds on it.
Well, and you'll remember my answer, which I thought it was an odd question. I was happy to answer it. I'm happy to answer any of this stuff. It seems like we spend a lot of time talking about things that are nonsense, but I'm happy to do it. Some of these people, and I said this, they're pathological liars, and they don't lie just about this. They lie about everything. Like they throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a group of them that all sharing each other's stuff. So, and I've said this multiple times. If you hear a lie and you tell somebody that lie, it makes you a liar. If you read something on Facebook and you share a lie on Facebook, it makes you a liar because you're sharing somebody else's post. And these people are doing that. So not only are they, a group of them that are doing this together are they're pathological liars, but they're bad liars. Yeah. And I define that as people that lie about stuff that's easily to prove is a lie. And this Jeep thing's a great example of that. So in my entire life, I have owned one Jeep. I was a Bronco guy for years. I kind of outgrew the Bronco, and I had big trucks. I think you and I may have met when I had a big 1-ton Ford truck that we'd mud run on the Stag Run on the Callahans and things. I had it for years. I was running for the Oregon legislature in 2007. I drove to Salem a couple times, and I was driving an Excursion at the time, and you could not park an Excursion in the parking spots anywhere around the Capitol. It was way too big for that.
They've changed that now.
Yeah, so it just didn't work. So I came home and I was going to buy a smaller car, and if I would have been as smart as you, I would have bought a Honda car to get good mileage, but I'm not a Honda car guy. So I bought this little red Jeep, brand new, off the dealer lot at Lithia. I bought it from my neighbor. She was a salesperson there. I bought it from her, and it had 7 miles on it when I drove it off the lot. I wrote a check for it, and it's been the only Jeep I've ever owned. It has literally been in every one of my campaigns. It's been at least one campaign piece. I brought one today.
You've got one on the table.
This picture was taken, I'm a little heavier then. It was taken in 2021, fully a year before they claim that Jeep was given to me. It now has about 190,000 miles on it. So I've driven in, I can't tell you how many parades and been at fairs and festivals, and it's the only Jeep you've ever seen me drive because it's the only one I've ever owned.
I've owned so many Jeeps over the years, and I have 4 of them right now. So I mean, I guess I'm a guilty Jeep owner myself. But
like you say, Tom's wife owned hers, the one that was in the picture, when he met her in high school.
Yep.
Well, and that's what cracked me up about it.
The sheriff, his was I think they got it in 2016. It was a year or two old. He's got a picture of when he bought it with his fiance. It's technically her Jeep. Yeah. And it's not the current model year for 2022. And Chris was the only, Commissioner Boyce was the only one who was the current model year, but it was a late 18 that he bought new in 18. And this was supposedly in 22. So it just all made up.
Well, Tom's the high hood. I think
53.
53 or 54,
Yeah.
right? They only made high hoods for like
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that, I'm like, are you kidding?
So you know why it's a high hood? Why they had to make a high hood?
I do actually, yeah, because they changed the motor design in them
Yeah.
and they needed the clearance for the
Yeah,
engine.
instead of having a flathead and it's got overhead
Yeah.
valves, and they
Yeah.
had to raise. So instead of reconfiguring the whole Jeep, they just added 8 inches in the hood and then the cowl.
Yeah. Trent,
We could talk Jeeps all night.
oh,
we're
I
not
know,
here for that.
and I've been working on them all day actually. Trent, I know being the chair of the Republican Party, you've got to have a comment on that. I don't want to spend too much time on the Jeep thing, but I'm sure you catch hell about it.
Yeah, I have a Jeep.
Yeah, you didn't pay much for yours.
I didn't pay much for mine, but it runs really good.
Yeah.
I got to get the air fixed, so yeah, doggone it needs it. I'm kind of a corporate guy. I need air conditioning.
Well, again, and I only bring it up because it kind of leads into some other topics, and I don't want to give this any wind because we know it's nonsense, and I mean it's a pretty good one though. I got to say, I mean, if being how I can throw something that nonsensical out there and it sticks, I can throw something out there going the other way. I mean, it's even worse, and it sticks.
Yeah,
Of course, I just don't play that game.
Lying to voters to get elected is not a good way to start a relationship with the people you're trying to serve.
It is not. And one thing that I do not do is lie to my voters, and nor do any of you, and I know that. Which leads me into something else. And again, I don't want to disparage anybody that's running for commissioner because I think there's a lot of good folks out there. And in this last forum, speaking with some of the Democrats, frankly, that are running, they're good folks. I don't think they're qualified for the position necessarily, but they're good folks, some of them. And one of the comments that keeps continually popping up, and he's probably going to hate that I'm going to say it, but I'm just going to say it, is this county budget.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you guys are so crooked, then first off, I know the story, so I know it's BS. But if you don't understand a budget and how the county budgets money, and you're out there holding the budget up and saying, "Oh, look at these guys are crooked," you look like the fool.
Yeah.
But explain it.
To be fair, municipal budgeting, government budgeting is wildly complicated, and it's much different than what we do in our businesses. It's much different than what we do in our households. And there's lots of laws around how it has to be done. And our budget, just like other, whether it's cities, counties, or state, are very complicated. And I've got 20-something years now. I started on the Roseburg Budget Committee maybe 25 years ago now, of doing public budgeting. So I have to be careful because I can go too fast and people don't quite understand. And I certainly wouldn't have at the beginning either. But basically what's being said is that the budgeted ending fund balance is a certain number. I think he uses the term $60 million. And then the next year, the beginning fund balance is $90 million. Where'd that $30 million come from? There's some fraud involved in that. Well, I've actually explained this, and he asked it at the budget committee hearing, and he left before we had a chance to answer it, but he came to my office later and I explained it to him. So when you do a budget at the county, everything you plan to spend has to be in the budget. You can't forget things. So you got to get everything in there. But when we first started doing this, Chris and I got there in 2015, the culture at the county was like every other government. They had the spend it or lose it mentality. So literally it would come out just about where it was budgeted because everybody would spend everything. And there was not a lot of effort to get grants or additional funding during the year. So they were running pretty close. Matter of fact, they were actually using reserve fund to continue to operate. Well, Chris and I got there and said, well, that's not going to work. There's no need to spend money if you don't need to, much like we do in our businesses. So we immediately, and I remember the first year, Commissioner Boyce sent out an email about 2 months before the end of the fiscal year saying, hey, don't buy computers, don't buy all this stuff, don't spend the money. No unauthorized spending. And that first year, we had quite a bit of a carryover because that money didn't get spent. So what that difference represents between the budgeted ending fund and the beginning fund of the next year, and the reason it goes up, there's kind of 4 main categories. So the first thing is all the money we didn't spend, right? So anytime any vacant positions, anything we didn't need to purchase, all the departments collectively, that's a chunk of money. Then it's any sort of grants you got during the year. So tomorrow we're going to accept a $6.3 million grant from the Forest Service to clean brush and stuff off the county roads. It'll take us many years to do that project. We likely won't do any of them this fiscal year. The money comes in during this budgeted year. It's certainly not in our ending fund balance. It's going to get added to the starting balance next year. We've got a bridge project that was planned to be completed at the end of this, before the end of this fiscal year. We're going to extend it a few more months because it's not going to get completed. So that money's going to carry over. Those two budget items represent about $10 million. Right. So that's a $10 million increase in the starting fund balance compared to what we budgeted to spend. You take your contingency. This year we haven't had a big storm or any big problems, so we haven't spent any contingency. We only got a couple months left. So when you add all that up, it's a good thing that we have $30 million more than what we budgeted for.
So did you try to explain that to
absolutely explained that. He goes, well, that doesn't make sense. I said, well, you could, each time there is an adjustment, each time we get a grant, or each time we know we're not going to complete a project in that year. And now these bridge projects can take 3 or 5 years. Yeah. So, sometimes it's that same number plugging over until you finally, get the project completed and pay it out. But you would literally almost, a couple times a month, you would be doing budget adjustments. That ending fund thing would be moving all over the place. Right. So at the end of the year, we true it up with what's happened. And I said, that's how it works. And you heard him say the other night, I was told that's what they have to do to make it work. Like it's something nefarious. It's just how public budgeting works.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, so what you're saying, Commissioner, this is a sarcastic comment to the other guy. You're being fiscally conservative or responsible.
Responsible, yeah. And we are seeking grants. Our Parks Department, our Public Works Department, literally all of our departments are seeking these opportunities, these grants. So one of the years he's looking at, we've got the $17 million grant for the, for the radio system. Okay. Well, when we did the budget, we didn't know we were going to get that money. So that year, that $17 million came in and didn't get spent that year. Yeah. So of course it's part of the beginning fund balance of the next year. So that is very much what happens. It's the larger that number is, the better we've done on the budget and the better we've got additional revenue, grants, and additional funding to provide services. So it's absolutely a good thing. And yeah, they're pointing it out like it's somehow a bad thing that we're not being transparent. I love that word, transparent. Well, all that stuff's available online. It's all, you can come in and talk to any of the commissioners about it. Tom, his degree is in finance. He was the finance director for CarQuest, for crying sakes. And I was on the full Ways and Means in the legislature, and I co-chaired the subcommittee for Health and Human Services, about a third of the state's spending. Yeah. Billions of dollars. So we've done this work. We get audited. That's the other thing that comes up. Candidates like, if I get there, we're going to have an audit. We have multiple audits going all the time. There's audits going consistently. Right. All the money we get comes with requirements of reporting and auditing, and there's a tremendous amount of work gone into making sure the money is spent correctly as per the requirements and accounting for it. And then of course our accounting group, our management finance team, they win the highest standard of award because they do it right.
What's the county budget?
Total funds 206.
Yes, 206
million. Yeah.
So that's
and the real thing to watch. Again, if you one year you get a $17 million grant, it's going to be $17 million more. If it go, we don't get it the next year, it's $17 million less. But the number that's the most important is the general fund reserve. That's the dollars that we have set aside in order to absorb sort of rough times, rainy days, and that's sort of what we look at as the holy grail to make sure we're doing the best we can to not spend that down. And over the last 8 years, we've actually put back in to the general fund reserve about $5.7 million. So this concept that we're spending all the money and the county's going to go bankrupt or insolvent or whatever you want to say is certainly a concern over time. But in the last 8 years, we have really changed how we do things. We've right-sized government to match the revenue coming in. We've worked on additional revenue stream. We're putting together next year's budget, and I know we're going to talk about O&C in a minute, and people don't know what that means. But just that one congressional act that we work so hard, the O&C Association, myself, the other commissioners all over the western side of the state of Oregon, changing that percentage to 75% Conservatively, we're going to plug in an additional $4 million of general fund revenue because of that change. And as they increase timber harvest, that'll exponentially go up.
And I'm so glad you brought up ONC, because there are things that you have some knowledge that God, you rattle this stuff off so fast sometimes, and I'm like, yeah, talk to him about how much timber. We have clearly Douglas County was timber capital of the world. Probably
it is a timber capital.
Probably still is, right? And I hear nonstop on social media from the other side, from the environmental side, and I'm not going to name names because I don't think most of the folks.
You heard it at the forum.
Yeah, they're not worth the time to talk about. But how many board feet a year do we grow in Douglas County?
Every day I learn about this. I learned something this morning. I presented to the Douglas Timber Operators Board of Directors, and I learned that the ONC volume amounts that are calculated by the BLM are on what's called east side scale, which is a little bit different than how they measure the wood that goes through our mills, but that's for another day. But on that east side scale and the historical measurement, on the ONC lands, which is that are managed by the Bureau of Land Management, that 2.1 million acres is in 18 counties, grows 1.2 billion board feet of new timber every year.
Right.
That's an annual growth established by the BLM, who's the managing agency. That isn't the county's numbers or my numbers. That's their number.
And be clear, that doesn't mean a tree starts and grows.
No. That means collectively all the trees combined in any given year gain 1.2 billion board feet of new material on the ground.
Right.
In 1937, leading up to the 1937 ONC Act, for 2 years leading up to that, they rode horses out and they did visual inventories of every 40 acres and did an inventory. And what they came up with for the 37 ONC Act is there was 50 billion board feet of standing softwood inventory on the ONC lands. So in the ONC Act, it says to harvest 500 million until you can establish the sustained yield amount. So that's a really easy calculation. That's a 100-year rotation. That's where you get that. So you can, do 500 million until you establish the growth. Well, it took them some time to get this established, but they finally established the annual growth on those lands as 1.2. There's those that believe it's much greater than that, but that's the number we use because that's what is printed in all the documents from the BLM. So there was years as they ramped up that program that they harvested, a billion or a billion two, but for 3 years, only 3 years, did they get over the 1.2 billion. So after the Oxbow fire, they went and picked up all the dead trees, ran them through mills, planted new trees, so they got the new growth going. After the Columbus Day storm, same thing. Right. Trees blew over, bad storm. They cleaned up the mess, reset the forest, the landscape, the timberlands to look good again. And then in the early 80s, mid 80s, there had been some lawsuits that occurred. So some of the sales were stacked up. So you had a few low years and they caught up. But for that, they've never harvested more. So again, in 1937, there was 50 billion. So between 1937 and 2014, they did another inventory for the 16 resource plan development. Now, admittingly, in 2014, they had better technology, so that it was a more accurate count. At that time, they had 73 billion board feet. So you get that? So the story about the trees being gone.
It's way more.
So there's almost 50% more back in 2014.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing, the age class of the stands, over 50%, actually 56% of the stands were over 80 years old, so older than the management period.
Yeah.
So during that time, over half of the stands they had not harvested, and there was almost 50% more wood. Now, since then, since 2014 to now, we can very comfortably say there's 50% more wood on those ONC lands today than there was when they started managing them in 1937. Now, I'm being very careful to say timberlands, because what happens is the BLM talks about the 2.1 million acre ONC forest. And that gives people the impression that it's this big contiguous forest, like the Umpqua National Forest. And it's not. These are checkerboard, basically 1 square mile blocks. The neighboring square mile block is industrial private timberland. So another way of looking at this is these are public industrial timberlands.
Yeah.
The ONC Act has a dominant use, whereas the Forest Service has multiple use. The dominant use is timber production.
Yeah.
It is literally, all these lands were in private ownership at one point. The government took them back because the railroad didn't do what they were supposed to do with the grant. And there was a big court case, went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they revested the lands back into public ownership. They actually paid the railroad for the lands when they took them back. And then when they started managing, they held 25% of the timber receipt from the counties to pay back the treasury for buying the land. So people wonder why counties are so invested in this. We bought these lands.
Yeah.
In 1953, that debt was paid off, and for one time, the counties got their 75%. And counties, the ONC Association, the one I'm president of, got together and said, hey, we need to reinvest in these lands. So voluntarily, they started putting 25% of their timber receipt back into these lands. They called it the plowback fund. They built the roads. They built all the management site buildings. So when you see the BLM buildings around, they built the recreational sites, the culverts. They did fire suppression, replanting, all came out of that fund. And up until the early 80s, counties in today's dollars put about $2 billion into management and future and return on these lands. And in 1982, it was the first time that 25%, there was a recession in the early 80s, and the sale of the timber didn't quite reach the amount needed to fund the management. So they switched it over to the Treasury, and that's when this rider, this language got put in the Interior Appropriation Bill that took that 25%, instead of voluntary, just took it, then it added to, out of the Treasury, whatever needed to make it up. Now, keep in mind, the Treasury was still getting lots of money from the ONC, so it was still a net positive. All the way up until 95, the money that went to the Treasury was greater than the money that cost to manage it. But counties, again, were fine because they were still getting plenty. The 50% was plenty. Well, as you move forward, things got pretty bad in the late, mid 90s, late 90s. And there was a series of OWL payments and sort of safety net things. Then 2000, the Secure Rural Schools Self-Determination Act was passed, and it gave counties on the ONC the average of the highest 3 years of timber receipts. So counties again were fine. They didn't care about this percentage thing. We don't have to fast forward very far. In 2015, I get there, I'm like, why is this being taken from us? Why is this 25%? and of course, when I got there, the reauthorization hadn't happened. We actually got real timber receipts, which was a fraction of what we'd been getting in Secure Rural Schools. And we went about doing two things. One is pushing the BLM to harvest and manage what the resource management plan called for, and two, getting back on receipts and changing that percentage. So anything we work on the ONC takes an act of Congress. So it literally, it's not an act of Congress getting your kids to clean their bedroom. It's truly an act of Congress. So it takes some time.
I find myself when I think about the timber, it's scary to think where we would be without the knowledge that you have.
Well, to be fair, Doug Robertson did this work for 30 years before I got there. So there again, I didn't come in and say he was doing a horrible job. I know how to do better. Yeah. I came in and said, could you help teach me this? Yeah. I want to learn this. Somebody has to know it. Yeah. And we had an ONC County Payments Committee in the legislature my last term up there. So I had kind of got introduced to this a little bit. Yeah. When Doug retired, we had another commissioner from up north, I think he was Columbia County, became the president. And he was doing a fine job, but to Columbia County, ONC is a very small percentage. Yeah. To Douglas County, it's really, really important. We get, of all 18 counties, we get 25% of it. We get a quarter of it right here because we have that much more land in our area, in our county, than the other counties do. So he lost his reelection. So a vacancy occurred. So again, it's not about, condemning or criticizing the person trying to do the work. It's finding that place to step in and help. So I'm in my 10th year of being the president, and I commit to those other commissioners. And there's 60-something county commissioners that can be the ONC president, right? It's all 18 counties have an opportunity to be members. Some counties have 5 commissioners, some have 3, but I think there's a big number of commissioners that can do this work, and they trust me to do it, and I take that serious.
I think it's important you just said a mouthful. I mean, I trying to go back and think about all the things you just said. And of course, people aren't going to necessarily follow all of it, but I think it's important if you are running for a commissioner position, you understand that. Yeah. And I look at some of the folks that are running for the commissioner position, and I guess I'll pick on them a little bit, but there are folks that think we shouldn't log at all.
Yeah, you have that group of people. Then you have the others that one of the gentlemen at the forum, I think you were moderating, said, well, even if we increase the harvest, it won't create any more jobs. And of course, he's only been here a couple of years.
Yeah, so he wouldn't.
That was one of the questions you asked for the opening. We were supposed to say how long we lived here. And that sort of helps you understand why people are answering the way they are. Yeah. Well, when I graduated high school, and it's a long time ago, 1983, I had friends that went to work. We graduated at our graduation on a Saturday. That Monday, or even some of them on Sunday, went to work making more money than the school teacher was making.
Yeah.
Right out, and they went, either in the woods or in a mill or, working on roads or equipment or different things. Everybody had a job. Anybody wanted a job had a job. And if we increase harvest of timber, and they complain about automation. Automation's for a lot of different reasons, efficiencies and workforce and different things. But there's no automation driving log trucks. There's no automation working on log trucks.
Right.
There's no automation building bunks at Whitlog for log trucks. Right. There's no automation at the line shop or at the clothing store for the specific clothing that loggers wear, or the chainsaw shops. Those are all jobs that will come back. And I remind people, you hadn't brought up the milling yet. Right now, there's an excess of milling in Western Oregon. The industry that represents them, American Forest Resource Council, they estimate there's 1 billion board feet of excess capacity milling right now without building a new mill. Now, they'd have to add some workforce,
sure,
but the structures are the infrastructure's there. But I remind people, when the first tree was cut down in Oregon to cut the first board out, there was 0 mills. The milling is here and the industry is here because the timber's here.
Yeah.
And there's more timber now on public land in Western Oregon than any time we've ever measured it, Forest Service or ONC.
Yeah,
and so this concept that we've run out of trees, or all the trees have been logged, or there's no demand for it, we have mills closing because they don't have wood supply.
Yeah.
Southport down over on the coast, they bring logs on barges down from Canada to run through their mill. Yeah. When you look out I've been there in their lot, there's trees everywhere, but they can't touch those trees because supposedly some little bird lives in them. And so anyway, it's pretty frustrating.
And to the bird point, there was a bill that was running through Congress that was going to allow. This was at the beginning of the 24 session, I think, that was going to allow the hunting of the barred owl. Well, because it's
that's a different bird. So that's the spotted owl conflict. Yeah. The bird on the coast is the Marlborough murrelet, which is really a seabird.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of science around that bird. I actually testified in front of Oregon Fish and Wildlife one time.
Yeah.
And at that point, they had a 10-year study going on for this Marlborough murrelet, which again lives in the ocean. It comes to shore, nest, lays eggs hatch, they go back to the ocean. And the assumed science is that they don't travel very far north and south on the ocean, and they kind of come in roughly to the same place all the time. And they come in every year. So they had this money they put together. They were going to study these birds. So they went out and caught these birds in the ocean. I don't know how they did it. And they were going to put trackers on them. And they had these new fancy super duper trackers that lasted a long time. So they put trackers on they got all these birds, and they put these trackers on them. And the trackers were too heavy, and the birds all drowned. So the first year they got no data. Kind of a tragedy. So the next year they went out and did the same thing, put the old trackers on. Well, the next year, these same birds went as far north as Seattle and as far south as San Francisco.
Yeah.
None of them, not one they had a tracker on, came on shore.
Right.
And this was the point I was testifying. I'm like, y'all are so eager to do something, because you got to do something. If you don't do something, it's going to be bad. But doing the wrong thing is worse than doing nothing. Yeah. Let's find out what it is. So to the spotted owl, we've spent the last 35 years protecting the spotted owl. Yeah. But generally what we have done has created a habitat that is more conducive for the barred owl, which
Right.
is stronger
Right.
and can get through the brush to the food.
Yep.
And the spotted owl is starving out because it can't get its food. There's no edges. There's no clear cuts.
Yeah.
It can't get the food. So,
It's
so,
just,
so the answer to that is they're going to go out and shoot the barred owl.
yeah, in Crater Lake Park.
All over. That's their only answer. And
Yeah.
it's funny. I used this analogy and told the story a bunch of time to my ONC folks. The resource management plan relies on this owl recovery. That's a requirement of a resource management plan. If there's an endangered species, the plan has to have within it a plan to recover the species. Well, the no action alternative, the doing no logging, didn't recover the spotted owl because of this barred owl conflict and fire. So they punted it to Fish and Wildlife, and Fish and Wildlife came up with the answers. They're going to go out and with shotguns and shoot the barred owl. Now, think about, this is the image I told the story. Elmer Fudd with his shotgun stomping around in the woods looking for the right owl to shoot.
Yeah.
He looks up, there's an owl in the tree. Is it a spotted owl? Is it a barred owl? They look relatively the same.
It's a dead owl.
And the crazy thing is they're interbreeding.
Oh, yeah.
So now they have spotted owls.
Yeah.
So do I shoot it? Do I hug it? Do I have a big question mark on my face? And imagine Elmer Fudd there with a shotgun. Our entire forest management plan relies on that image.
Yeah.
And I told that story over and over. Well, not just a few months ago, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana was on the House floor, and he had a picture of Elmer Fudd with a shotgun. I just about fell out of my chair when I saw it. I'm like, I've told that story 100 times, and I doubt he's ever heard, or talked to anybody I told it to. So I'm kind of thinking we might be the same age and watch the same cartoons growing up. But
I'm going to remember that one. That was a good one. My theory on this thing is the way I look at the environmental movement, and the spotted owl included, and the marbled murrelet and all the other stuff. They look for reasons to block capitalism for the most part. I mean, in general, right? And they've done a fantastic job doing that. But what I see, ever since I've been in the legislature since 23, I've seen where the environmentalists have gotten to the point, and I sit on that committee, where they've got to make a decision now. Because, for instance, putting windmills off the coast, are we going to have free electric from windmills that's maybe reliable or maybe not? By doing it, we're going to kill whales?
It could be a lot of things, but it's not free.
No, it's not free.
Yeah.
We're going to kill whales while we do it? It's like, you got to make a decision. You guys don't want to kill whales. You don't want to kill owls. And the same thing with, it just cracks me up. They want to put solar panels over farmland, right? Instead of farming, instead of grazing cattle. And then they want to put them in Eastern Oregon over the desert, which covers, I don't know, the sage grouse, the rattlesnake, all these endangered species. But it's okay to cover 400 acres of their land, but I can't take my vehicle and drive on that land. I just, at a point, I think the environmentalist movement has gotten to, it's out of control, and I always say, they run into themselves coming around the corner.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at with the spotted owl.
So I'll give you an example of when I figured out that there's a group of these folks that maybe aren't honest in their dealings. So after some of the big fires, they like to go in and try to at least get the hazard trees from alongside the road. And these hazard trees are dead. I mean, they're burnt up. Then at some point they will fall across the road, and if somebody happens to be there, it could hit them. But it also can block the road for fire access and other things. So we worked hard, the Association of ONC Counties, to get a category exclusion to streamline the environmental process, the NEPA process, for doing these roadside hazard trees.
I remember that.
And so they had this category exclusion. It doesn't eliminate the environmental analysis, it just streamlines it so they can get the wood out while it still has tremendous value. Those trees the day after the fire are virtually worth the same as the day before. You can sell them, and people will pay you to take them out and plant new ones.
Yep.
So they did a big category exclusion, and the environmental community and the lawyers sued on that to stop it. And you think, why would they do that? Wouldn't they want those dead trees that are going to fall and hurt people taken out and new trees planted? That would seem like that would be more environmentally friendly. And the argument about having some snags for wildlife, but the whole forest is snags, so it's not that argument. Well, then you find out they'll sue and stop it, and it doesn't happen. But the handbook from the Forest Service says they can take those trees out without that environmental assessment once they become structurally unsound. So after 7 or 8 years,
a wasted tree.
Now you're going to pay that same logger to come up and cut that log down and haul it off. It has no value. So what I figured out pretty quickly is that there's a group of these folks that do these lawsuits that hate the industry and the counties making money more than they love the forest.
Yeah.
And that's the best way I can say that. There's no other reason for that. And I'm not talking about salvage logging units. I'm talking about the standard is on a road. Below the road, you can take a tree length out, the average tree length, so it won't hit the road. And above the road, it's a 3.5 tree length. That's the standard. The logging's really inexpensive because literally it's by the road. Replanting's easy. It's really a high success. It's relatively profitable. It generates pretty good revenue, quite a bit of volume. And some of these bigger fires will have 600 or 700 miles of road and fire access that is impacted. So, you can get quite a bit of volume on the dead trees, but they won't let you take even the roadside hazard trees out.
Well, and then they talk about clear cutting and all this stuff, and it's like, I don't think you can clear cut on federal forest land anyway.
So on ONC, the closest thing they come to a clear cut is called a regenerative harvest. That's variable retention, where they'll leave 30% of the trees within the unit. Now remember, conifers, Douglas fir, spruce, conifer trees, they grow better with light.
Sure.
So the historical way of harvesting a unit and replanting and growing back is much more efficient and effective than if you thin and try to plant amongst the thinning. The light doesn't get down to the new trees very well, and that's the same problem after fire. They'll tell you they go in and plant, but after a fire, it takes them so long to get the funding in place. By the time they go plant, the brush is higher than the trees.
Yeah.
On federal land, they can't use herbicides. So
Right.
The race is to get the tree established before the brush gets above it.
Right.
And when you do logging, it sort of disrupts the brush in the ground, and literally under the canopy, there's no brush anyway. So the idea is, within a couple of years, you get it planted, and the tree can outpace the brush. After these fires, it takes them so long to get the funding and the projects in place. Very rarely do they get out there before the brush is gone. So they sometimes will go in and hand treat the brush. You imagine how expensive that is.
Oh, yeah.
And they plant, but they plant in the shade of the dead trees.
So it won't grow.
The dead trees eventually are going to fall and crush the new trees. They're going to uproot the new trees when they fall over. And there's, for the next 50 years, those trees will be falling over, and the erosion from the ground, because it uproots them. It's really the worst thing ever you could do post-fire. You should go in and, there's some areas you might want to leave some, wildlife snag trees and stuff. But if you go in and remove that timber, take the value. It's worth a lot of money. Replant, new trees and new stands of timber on timberlands and new forest in the national forest. You might disrupt it for a couple of years while you do that, but over the next 50 years, it's going to be a lot less erosion and a lot less problems. And literally, you have new trees growing.
So you know what the fastest growing conifer is in North America?
Probably
The
redwood.
merchantable conifer is.
Probably redwood.
Yeah, redwood. California redwood. People I say that, and people are like, redwoods take forever to grow. I'm like, no, they don't. They grow
They
like
grow
weeds.
fast, yeah.
I have several of them in my yard.
Yeah.
They grow like weeds.
Good way to try to stump me, though. That was good.
I did try to stop you, yeah, but I figured you'd know. So I don't want to beat up the timber thing too much, but since we're on the topic, I do want to just clarify something else too. And I've watched this happen. The county parks. I'm trying to think of the Cabot Creek and what's the Whistler's Bend. You guys have done an amazing job with Whistler's Bend.
Yeah.
It already was a world-class frisbee golf course, and now
It was a great frisbee golf course. It's better now. We've taken some of the hazard trees from around the golf course that were dangerous, but more importantly, we've redone all the facilities, including put a really nice campground in.
Right.
And we're the last phase of that is really coming up real soon. But it is one of our many improvements in our parks, and we have invested quite a bit of money in our parks. A lot of that is grant money we get from the state. Thank you. But a lot of it is being innovative on how we figured out how to get the local match and do things. And we've developed this park model where we have just a small handful of destination campgrounds that pay for the entire 68 park system. Our number one used park generates virtually no revenue, and that's River Forks Park.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of pavilion rental, but for the most part, that park is our number one trafficked park. It is, a beautiful park. There's lots of variety of things to be used there. But we have a handful of campgrounds. Chief Mayalita down in Galesville.
Yeah, which is looking amazing.
And it's got all new, the campground's all new, but so does the play structures and the day use and we've done some improvements to a variety of different facilities there. And it is used in the summertime for water recreation, water skiing, fishing, wintertime fishing. So it's very much a destination. We're just finishing Stanton Park, and it is a river access for Umpqua River. It's along the freeway, and between the river and really the casino, that's a destination, and it's going to be world class. And we've redone the pavilion and some other things, but all the campground is all going to be new. We have Knight Park. We have a horse area for people to camp with their horses, with corrals and tremendous horse riding opportunities out there. And then, of course, as we go over towards the coast, we have Windy Cove A and B, the old Discovery Point, which is Umpqua Dunes, Half Moon Bay, and the Salmon Harbor, campground, which those are all full all the time. And just the one Umpqua Dunes generates almost half of the revenue that's generated in the entire park system.
Well, and you guys took such a beating over that. And I know that Coos County with Riley Ranch.
Yeah, they do the same thing down there.
Similar model.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Riley Ranch.
But they have a fraction of the number of parks we have to support.
Yeah.
Douglas County had the first park system of any county in the state.
Right.
And we have the most parks. And it is a factor of these O&C timber dollars we had for so long. We just... people that grew up here, that are used to the services they get provided, we have the fourth lowest permanent property tax rate in the state of Oregon. It's only $1.11 per thousand.
Yeah, I've got that in my notes.
So,
to talk about too.
so all these services we've all enjoyed here forever were paid for by timber receipts.
Yeah.
There was a time when the county, between the Forest Service and the O&C, would get over $50 million of timber receipts, which was over half of our total fund budget.
Yeah.
And so, we were able to have a lot. There was a time the county had approximately 1,200 employees. We had our own bridge crew. We made bridges.
Yeah.
The county took bridges and roads from the state and the federal government because we had crews that could work on them. We had a revenue stream to pay for them. So, Highway 99, that's a state highway.
Yeah.
The Tiller Trail Highway, that's a state highway. The county, again, the logs were coming off of those forests and those timberlands, and the roads weren't being maintained very well. So the county said, hey, we got this, and they took over those roads.
So these are things that only somebody who's been around Douglas County a long time would understand.
Again, the several of the candidates, I think one of them is just a couple years, and one of the ones, two of the ones running against me, but one of the ones running with me is just a few years, 3 years maybe, and they just don't know.
And frankly, I judge, I'm pretty judgmental when it comes to elected positions, because I think you have to be able to you got to do the job. And, I think about how many of those candidates have ever visited a logging site?
Yeah.
How many of those candidates have ever, called up, I don't know, pick a name, Charles Ireland, and said, hey, can I go for a ride in one of your log trucks?
So I love we need a diverse economy. And it's like, okay, so we have here in Douglas County a world premier, he calls them boats, I call them ships, but they're fishing boats that are built that fish in the Bering Sea.
Yeah.
So if you've ever watched the TV show The Deadliest Catch, several of the boats on The Deadliest Catch are made right here in Douglas County.
Yeah.
And at any given time, they are maintaining and building and taking care of, a fleet of boats. And Commissioner Boyce said this the other day, I thought it was funny, literally bringing boatloads of money to Douglas County to do it.
Right.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Right.
Well,
we helped them expand and move to Bowen Island.
Yeah.
Commissioner Boyce walked them through and worked really hard to get some Business Oregon money. We had some economic development money we put into that to help them they moved from a small location to a much larger. So we have that. We have Orentco systems, world-class systems of wastewater systems all over the world.
All over the world,
and you go into their shop, they have a big monitor where they are monitoring these systems all over the world. That happens right here in Douglas County.
So I went and visited their plant.
Yeah,
and
pretty
I
amazing.
literally, on multiple occasions, I've walked their facilities, their production. And of course, when I was moderating that forum, I can't ask those questions. Well, what I want to say is, have you ever been there?
Have you ever looked? Yeah.
Have you ever walked through Convey's plant? Have you ever walked through
Convey's on my
plant?
list, right? They're building world-class milling manufacturing equipment going all over the United States.
Right.
FCC Furniture
that
builds, you can talk more about that because, that's your business. But literally that stuff goes all over the United States.
Yeah.
Maybe let's go to Canada too.
Very little, but some. I'm
So
out of it now.
So you have that, but you have Caddock, out by Glide.
Caddock,
I don't know what they do, but whatever they do, it must be pretty nice because
Top
it's a
secret.
great facility.
Well, and there's also a smaller facility in Greene. Again, I'm not going to mention their name, but they're building government boats
Yep.
now for military boats.
Yep.
Like some of them are one-way boats, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But there's a machine shop over in Sutherland. It's got an aerospace contract.
Yeah.
It's building aerospace parts. That we have an incredibly diverse economy. Is my point.
Yeah.
We, the commissioners, talk a lot about the timber in the ONC. Still, we are the timber capital of the world because our county is covered with timber. It grows timber here better than anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So that's one reason. Our one of the largest employers in our county is that industry, historically and today. We also talk about it because we have a revenue share system to pay for services, and it's the federal government's obligation and promise to counties because they don't pay property tax on that land. Half of our county is owned and managed by the federal government,
Right.
and there's a promise. When they built the system out of forests, U.S. forest and national forest, there was a promise of productivity. They weren't supposed to be parks. They weren't set aside. They were going to be productive. They're going to be multiple use. All the values, all the uses equally.
Yeah.
And everything is done except for the harvest. That part just got
But
dropped.
some of our environmental friends would rather tax the timber company's private lands to death to make up that difference.
That's easily to get confused. So when I talk about shared timber receipts, think about a tree. So when a tree on federal land is sold into the market, 100% of that value is split between the federal government and counties.
Yep.
On Forest Service, we take a portion of the money that we get and share it with the schools.
Yep.
On ONC land, we keep it for our services. So you'd have to tax private timber at 100% to equal the value of what shared timber receipts. It's not a tax. It's a commodity that the public owns. It's a publicly owned commodity that's grown.
Right.
And when it's sold in the market, we share that receipt. We plant a new tree and grow it again and do it again and over and over and over. The term sustained yield first appeared in Congress and any congressional legislation that we could find in the 1937 ONC Act. It was the first recognition of not harvesting more than what grows. Literally, the 1937 ONC Act is a conservation act. It's the first recognition. You can't just go over to the next watershed and keep harvesting. We don't want to harvest more than it grows.
Yeah.
And if you do it right, and we did it right for 50 years, all the values, the clean air, the clean water,
Right.
the recreation, the economy, the supply of timber,
No forest fires?
all worked well when we did it. We managed them under the principles of sustained yield.
Yeah.
The last 30 years, 35 years now, we haven't.
Yeah.
Every summer, the air is not clean. The water's not clean. We've had 2 city municipal water systems have had to upgrade their water plants because of the runoff of the Archer Creek fire. I mean,
Listen, I firmly throw
the economy's shot, the recreation shot, the roads, everything's shot, in the forest because we're not managing our sustained yield. You can do both.
You can, and I blame the environmental movements for a lot of the problems that we're having, and that's anyway. I don't want to get too far off in those weeds. I have a couple of other topics.
Sure.
We got about another half hour, so we're going a little over tonight. Thank you for staying with us, everybody that's watching. And again, we're going to talk about our sponsors here in just a little while, but. One of the biggest subjects that statewide topics, of course, besides schools, is the homeless issue.
Yeah.
Right. I view the homeless issue as a statewide problem, and I also view it locally as a city problem.
I think it's everybody's problem.
It affects all of us for sure. So it becomes a problem, with the trash and everything else. But you guys take a lot of heat. And when I say you guys, you 3 commissioners, take a lot of heat for the homeless.
But about every 4 years, this sort of gets flared up. Sort of aligns with election season.
Sure.
But it's fine, and we're happy to talk about it. So you're right. There is a problem. I'm the only commissioner that lives in the city limits of Roseburg, and I've lived here for over 30 years. I raised my kids here. Again, I was on Roseburg City Council. I live in the same home that I've lived in all that time. I don't like what's going on. I bought my home over in Hillcrest so my kids could use the Stewart Park and all that area, and they did growing up. And now my wife and my grandkids won't even go into the park anymore.
It's not safe.
It's not safe.
No.
But that being said, let me talk a little bit about where we start from, where our base is as commissioners, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we do from there. So the first thing, and I think this is a difference between cities and counties, we as county commissioners have no authority over any law enforcement officer. So a city councilor, collectively they hire a city manager, the city manager hires the police chief, so there's a chain of command there, and they have, once removed from the city manager, but collectively they have a pretty good say, and they have, some direct oversight of what law enforcement does. As a county commissioner, we do not. You all elect a sheriff.
Oh, you mean you don't tell the sheriff what to do?
I'm not sure anybody tells the sheriff what to do, and he
Pretty
knows,
sure.
and he knows exactly what to do. He's a spectacular sheriff.
Yes,
I've
he
come
really is.
to know him very well, and not only in a working relationship, but as friends.
Yes.
But we don't have any authority over that. The other thing that's pretty interesting is we get zero funding to deal with homeless or housing.
Right.
That's just not part of the scope of things that are under our umbrella. That being said, let me talk a little bit about what we do. So one of the most important things we do for homeless is our Veteran Service Office.
Yeah.
So we run one of the best Veteran Service Office. Mary Newman is our Veteran Service Officer, but her and her staff, fully staffed, fully funded, oftentimes get more veterans their benefits. They literally apply for benefits claims that these veterans have earned. That's all they do there. We don't serve veteran services. We serve veterans in a way that gets them connected to benefits they've earned. That's what we do in our VSO office. There's a lot of months where we get the most in the state, and I don't mean the most per capita. I mean the most total claims processed, more than Multnomah County or Washington County, and you know the numbers.
I do.
I mean, there's exponentially more veterans in those counties. Some months we're number one, some months we're number two or number three, but we're always in the top group.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. So in two ways that helps keeps veterans from becoming homeless. One is it just gives them money to pay rent or to pay their mortgage or whatever. It's a benefit they've earned, and when they qualify for those benefits, getting those checks, there's always a retro check when they qualify, so they get a big chunk and then they get monthly chunks oftentimes. Oftentimes they get a retro and they get monthly checks moving forward. Sometimes there's a housing benefit as part of their what they've qualified for. So that's our veteran piece. Our seniors department, we purchase and feed about 80,000 meals a year through our seniors office.
It's funny, all this stuff just fails to get talked about.
I know.
when everybody's
Our Meals on Wheels program does Meals on Wheels everywhere but the city of Roseburg. Friendly Kitchen does the city of Roseburg, and we do everything else. But another program we run in seniors is Oregon Project Independence, and you know that from the legislature.
Yep.
And that's a program that helps seniors with a small amount of help to keep them in their homes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's having somebody come and help them clean a little bit. Sometimes it's helping them, pay a power bill or a rent or something. But it's a small investment to keep seniors from becoming homeless, and it keeps them in their home as long as they can safely.
Yeah.
And we run that program. So we got veterans and seniors. We run the largest shelter. The largest homeless shelter in this county is run by in the whole county is run by Douglas County.
Would that be the VA?
No, it'd be the jail.
The jail.
And that sounds funny, but in any given day, if you counted the number of people that were in the jail that night, it would be more homeless people than any other shelter has capacity for. So, and that sounds bad, but honestly, that is oftentimes the start of people getting better. Yeah. I call it rock bottom. It gives them a chance to get off the street for a couple days. If it's freezing cold outside, they've committed some kind of crime, they're in the jail overnight or 2 or 3 nights. It used to be 2 or 3 nights. Now it's usually one night. But they get some food, they get some emergent health care, they get a little bit of clarity in their mind. We have a drug treatment program, alcohol and drug treatment program in the jail that has open slots. So if you happen to be in our jail and you decide, hey, I'm done with this, I don't want to do this anymore, you can sign up and get treatment right there.
I want to just pause for a second and add the jail to one of those places where if you're running for county commissioner, you should have been there. Yeah. You should have toured the jail. I've done it. I've toured, and it's frankly, parts of it are disgusting. But it's
pretty sobering.
It's pretty damn sobering. Yeah. And if you haven't toured the jail and you're running for county commissioner.
So let me keep going down my list. I'm sorry, it takes a little while.
Go ahead.
So it's those drug treatment programs that get people truly off of drugs and get them moving towards, doing better for themselves. We have 3 specialty courts. We have drug court, we have domestic violence court, and we have mental health court. All three of those courts, as a person is going through those court systems, and basically it's an alternative to prison, they are held accountable by the judge at a pretty high level and other members of the court. And one component of that, and specifically in the drug, but also in the domestic violence and the mental health, is a housing component. They have to have permanent, stable housing. So that's all part of that. So, and we, the commissioners, prioritize funding those programs, those specialty courts. So we also partner with every city that has asked us for help. So some cities, the commissioners have contracts for the sheriff's service. So we sign the contract with the cities, the sheriff provides the services, and in several cities, the sheriff's department is enforcing their time, place, and manner ordinance. But outside of cities, we don't have a time, place, and manner ordinance. We believe when people are committing crimes, not sleeping in a tent's not a crime, I guess, in Oregon, and homeless isn't a crime, but all the other stuff they do is a crime. Yeah. Whether that's stealing to purchase drugs, whether it's possession of drugs, whether it's the vandalism or, all the garbage they throw everywhere, all those things are relatively low-level crimes. Some of the stealing's higher, lots of assaults, lots of violence, all those things happen. Outside of cities, the sheriff's department holds those people accountable. We don't have a huge homeless problem in county parks, and that's not out of luck, that's out of design. That is, making sure we have law enforcement holding people accountable. So we do a lot of things to help cities, again, their time, place, and manner ordinances. Even the city of Roseburg, they were very closely watching their budget, and they were paying for jail beds per night. And you could see at the beginning of the month, they might have more people in jail than at the end of the month as they were watching that budget. So we got together and said, that is not a good way to serve justice. You shouldn't be able to commit more crimes at the end of the month than at the beginning of the month because there's no room in the jail. But I understand it from a budget standpoint, why that is something they had to really watch close. Right. So we changed our agreement with the city of Roseburg, and they purchase a certain amount of beds for a very discounted price, and they get to use those amount, and in one day they could be over, and next day they could be under, but over time we sort of monitor it. So it's not this every single day counting thing. So they have more room and more ability. And before COVID, a bunch of things happened during COVID. So during COVID, of course, there was this big exodus from the jails and the prison systems that was pushed by the state. That wasn't a county thing. People think the sheriff lets people out of jail, but really it's the court system. That's a state system that does that. So that happened. Measure 110 was passed. It legalized drugs, so a lot less people coming into the jail.
Yeah, we got that.
And the no cash bail thing passed, so people no longer had to put cash money up to get put out. And as part of the no cash bail thing, there is now court release officers that each morning release everybody out of the jail before they even get arraigned. And they have a metrics they look at. They don't just release everybody, but they have a pretty low bar to keep people in jail. So it used to be before COVID, we'd have our jail to have anywhere from 180 to 210 people in it on any given night. Now we're running 140 to 160.
Yeah.
So on any given night, there's 50 to 60 less people in the jail. And it's not the same 50 or 60 people, it's the rotating of people. But imagine if there was, just here in Roseburg, 50 or 60 less people, not the same people, but any given night that were committing crimes and kept in jail instead of cite and released, kept in jail one night, 2 nights, maybe 3 or 4 nights, waiting arraignment. That time of them being housed, them being fed, them having a period of time where they're not using drugs, some clarity in their mind, emergent healthcare needs, how much better that would be for that population and how much different in behind Waldron's would look. Any given night, if there was 30 less or 40 less people in there, again, not the same people, it always rotates. But that's what we had before COVID, now we don't. So we just had a pretty good conversation about this at a commissioner meeting, and we're trying to develop a resolution that talks about all three of us. We're all sort of in a different, I'd say we're in a completely different place, but we kind of come from different angles. I think that law enforcement is the solution, holding people accountable. Again, being homeless isn't a crime, I get that. But committing crimes when you're homeless is still committing crimes. Yeah. And I think, I'm just saying I'm a tough on crime guy. I'm on the state's Criminal Justice Commission. I'm literally the only lock them up and throw away the key guy on the Criminal Justice Commission, which creates an interesting back and forth with the other people that are on that commission. But I think Commissioner Kress has a really good take. He's just sick of it and wants the city to do something and wants to help them however they need help, but wants them to come up with a solution.
The key word is the city.
Yeah, this is city land. It's city park. We can't tell them what to do in the city park.
Right.
Again, we don't let that go on in county parks.
Right.
And because the services they get are here locally, it tends to attract them in. City of Sutherland, they have a model that seems to be working very well. They have a place where they can require people to go. It gets them off of public property.
Hastings Village.
They have a gentleman that runs that holds people accountable to pick up their messes and stuff.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, the homeless folks don't like him very much, so they tend to go somewhere else. So, and he's helped a lot of them get straight, and we recently had the Douglas County Interagency Narcotics Team did some enforcement work around theft, actually. It wasn't even around drugs.
I heard some
They
stories.
ended up arresting 9 people. All 9 of them had drugs on them, but they didn't arrest them originally for the drugs. One of them threw the drugs way down in the bribery bushes, and they didn't want to crawl down and get them. So 8 of the 9 got additional charges, besides their theft and other charges, of drug possession charges. So
Heard they stole the bike.
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty interesting how that worked. It was an e-bike, so it was a fairly expensive bike. But the story that I guess coming out of that is that, almost 100% of the people that were involved in that enforcement action, the enforcement action wasn't around drugs. They didn't walk a drug dog through there and
Right.
pick out people that, that were in, committing crimes from drug possession. They literally picked out people that were stealing. Stealing's a big problem with the homeless. That's literally how a lot of them fund their drug habit, and they have no other mechanism. So that's what the enforcement started out. But it's pretty obvious that there's a huge drug problem as part of that. And even though Dent normally focuses on the big guys, the guys that are selling, the distributors and the dealers, if you were to look at one place anywhere in Douglas County where the most concentrated purchasers of drugs were at, it might be right there.
Yeah.
So it was not a bad place. They have additional enforcement activities planned.
So let me change subjects here.
So let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
So we do a lot with homeless, and we want to help, and we want to make it better.
Yeah.
We're not turning the blind eye. We don't say that isn't ours to worry about.
Right.
What we say is we're doing everything we can from the position of having no funding and the position of having no law enforcement. We still do all those other things I just talked about.
I don't see tents in River Forks Park, so that matters. And I wish people could delineate the difference between Roseburg City and Douglas County. You guys don't have authority over that. It's clear. And you see that Roseburg's a dumpster fire, just about everywhere there's a homeless tent.
They have... It's a difficult task.
It is very difficult.
None of the cities have quite figured it out. So because of the state law,
right,
because of the state of Oregon set of laws, it's more difficult. You go to St. George, Utah, or Moab, or Idaho, Boise. They don't have the problems we have because their state laws are different than Oregon state laws.
State's completely different.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go to questions. I've got a. Yeah, I think I see the question. This is from Walt Peterson. He says, "Does the county support the sanctuary premise that is prevalent in the state?" And
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, matter of fact, we answered that. I guess it was the forum before the one you moderated. That was a question. There's this, I don't know, rumor or concern that ICE is looking for a facility in Roseburg, and being on the Douglas Interagency Narcotics Team board of directors, I serve on the board of directors of that organization, and going out and firsthand witnessing these illegal cartel marijuana grows and see how they treat these people, this human trafficking that occurs, and these immigrants and what they're doing, these illegal immigrants, I'd be all about having additional law enforcement here to help us deal with those problems. The other thing that makes absolutely no sense to me is when we have somebody in a county jail that has a final removal order, why we're not able to call or email ICE and say, hey, this person has a final order of removal. They're here in custody.
Right.
Come get them. Instead, they turn them loose, and then you see all that stuff on the street where they're trying to arrest them and all the danger that creates. That makes no sense to me. This current President Trump, declared these cartels terrorist organizations, and our law enforcement folks. No, it is. They can call the FBI because they're terrorists.
Yeah.
they can't call immigration because their immigration status is a problem. But because if a drug grow is established to be a cartel drug grow, the federal connections with the FBI, because just like any other terrorist group, they're required, they're mandated to notify them. So I think that is a distinction that a lot of people don't understand. The immigration thing is exclusive to them being in the country illegally. Other crimes they're committing, you can still deal with the federal government on those. So my answer to that is the original idea of sanctuary came when Republicans had, I think, control of the House.
Yeah, they voted.
And it was a financial thing that the federal government should be spending money. So really the original idea was not to spend state dollars or local dollars doing federal work. It wasn't to exclude them from coming here and doing it. It was to encourage them to come do it and not have us do it. It has changed. There's a second sanctuary law that prohibits that communication. Instead of spending money on it, now it is prohibiting. It's much different than it originally was set up for.
So Walt, hopefully that answers your question. I want to go back also to a comment that Tanya Brady, I think is her name, made. And she said, and much like I thought, she said that all the local mills now have geared down to just run smaller logs so they can't handle some of the larger logs. I made that comment the other night, and I found out I was wrong.
Yeah, that's not quite right.
They still can handle, 38-inch logs, I think?
Different mills are different. So Herbert, they'll buy just about as big a log as you'll sell. So after the Archer Creek fire, Rock Creek Road right-of-way, county right-of-way, there was a bunch of big dead trees there. We took them out, and Herbert bought all that big stuff. Yeah. Sierra Pacific Industries in Eugene is building a new mill. Their new head rig will take up to a 58-inch log. Yeah. So, but we have other mills here in Douglas County. There's, I think, 4 that buy big logs. There's mills over at the coast that buy big logs. So that is an interesting talking point. I remind people forever, there's been a desire to mill to the smallest part of the tree. Yeah. Every big tree has a small tree at the top. Yep. So there has been, really since the beginning of milling, a desire to figure out how to maximize the entire tree, including the small part of the tree. And there is some mills that are focused solely on the small part of the tree, but there's other mills that'll buy the big part. So, even on a big tree, you might sell the bottom part of the tree to one mill and the top part to another mill. So
no, it's good information, and thank you for clarifying that as well. So we have about 15 minutes left. We're going to talk about our sponsors here at the end. I want to give everybody an opportunity again. We have Commissioner Freeman here. We can ask questions. I don't know what's been coming in on YouTube, if there's any good questions, Trent. I've seen very few questions, a few comments, but I think one of the things I've learned tonight is I thought I knew a lot more about the commissioner's job than I did, and now I think I don't know as much as I thought I did, and holy cow. And we have only touched a few of the subjects.
Yeah. Tom said this the other night. Like I say, he spent quite a bit of time learning about it, meeting with Doug and with me and Chris, and sort of learning what it was. Yeah. But he also said, I'm a much better commissioner today than the first day I started. Yeah. And it's interesting. A lot of people, they want just this constant turnover, and Douglas County has had both. It's had some one-term commissioners and it's had some long-term commissioners. It's had, some folks that really spent a lot of time learning and becoming experts on one single thing, and some commissioners that knew a lot about a lot of different things. And that's kind of one of those jobs where you've got to know a lot about a lot of different things. We do a lot of different things at the county. There's a lot of different services the people of Douglas County rely on us to do. I have chosen to learn about the ONC. Tom has learned about our radio system. He literally ran that grant system through because of the time frame. We delegated authority to him, and he's been putting that system in place at lightning speed because of the time of the grant, and if not, we were going to not be able to do it. So,
listen, I know what it's like to be on a emergency call up the North Umpqua and not have radio contact.
Yeah, so that legacy system, was outdated when I became a commissioner. It was end of life, so we have struggled with trying to figure out a way to resolve that. And of all things, a FEMA mitigation grant after the Archer Creek fire is what funded it. We got the grant 4 years after the Archer Creek fire, and it was a 5-year grant, and the time started at the Archer Creek fire. So we had a year. The previous administration said it'd be no problem getting an extension. The new administration came in and said no extensions. So we looked at that, and it's like, boy, all the vendors that they wouldn't bid because they didn't have the time to tune the system
Right.
before they turned it on. So we've literally had to flip that around and say, we're going to accept the 80% quality day one, and then you're going to spend time after the date tuning it in so we could get the grant finalized.
Yeah.
Just about the time we got that all done, got it finalized, got the money spent, approved, everything's fine, the new administration said, oh, by the way, we'll give you an extension. But it was, we'd already done the work. So
Well,
we couldn't gamble on that. And
it's just
and we still have a little bit of tuning in to do and some work to do to make it just perfect. But it is already better than it's been.
it's just one more thing that you guys have on your plate.
And again, Commissioner Kress really rolled his sleeves up and dug in on that. And Commissioner Boyce has figured this park thing out. And we are getting park grants largely because we have mechanisms in place to do the local match and the plans and we did a big parks master plan and all these things had to get in place. And because we have all that in place, we're able to get these very large, successful projects completed.
Yeah. Well, some of the
in our parks.
some of the OHV money, I used to sit on
you
that.
absolutely helped with, yes.
So, yes.
I was going to say, and you notice he said they have a plan, right? You remember one of his competitors in the
they have
race
no
said
work plan.
they
Yeah.
had no plan. It's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, they do.
So, well, again, it just kind of goes back to the fact that, listen, if you want to be a commissioner or you want to be a state rep or you want to be whatever you want to do, understand the job.
Yeah.
Spend the time and
So you should come look at some of our emergency planning. We have really, Wayne Stinson was a fantastic emergency manager, but his focus was on sheriff's department type emergencies.
Yeah.
And emergencies has really evolved. When COVID hit, I pulled the emergency plan off the shelf, opened it, said, call the public health department. We don't have a public health department anymore. So we literally developed that plan on the fly as we were going through COVID. We now have great plans in place. We've evolved that program to its own department.
Yeah.
It's department head level. They got their staff and facilities. They very much work with the sheriff's department and with search and rescue, which is still under the sheriff's department. But emergency management now is a standalone department, and it's outward facing.
listen, I like I said, I thought I understood most of what you guys did. Tonight I learned I don't know half of what you do. So this has been an amazing hour. We do have to talk about our sponsors. I want to talk about them real quick, but I want to give you guys just a few more minutes. If you have questions, now's the time to ask before we cut off for the night.
You're going to let me say thank you, weren't you?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We're just going to talk about sponsors for a second. Okay, you want to go first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, there you go. haven't spoken much.
These guys pay our bills. This is not
Yeah.
free. We don't get to do this for free. I wish we did, but Little Mill Media's got to make some money somehow.
That's
I'm
right.
getting that evil look from behind the tent.
Well, I want to start with Bob Murray Trucking. Bob and his beautiful wife are good friends of ours, and Bob Murray Trucking hauls 1 million pounds of earth every day, whether it's lumber, logs, rock, all kinds of building materials, even hay or alfalfa for ranchers. Bob Murray Trucking has A-Train Maxis for the full 30-ton load. I don't know if you've ever seen those. Those are those great big that you see driving through coming from Missouri. Yeah. So they can haul it all. He said, you call, we haul, and that's all. Bob Murray Trucking.
Great guy.
Hey, Bob's a great guy. He's been a great sponsor
Yeah.
for this program.
We're going to get to see him on Thursday night.
That's true.
And his wife drives a Jeep. Red
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Red Jeep. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
A red one?
Yeah.
Not a girl.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Tom needs to paint his Jeep.
I'm gonna do Becky Holmes real quick here. Becky Holmes has been a long time, literally. I think she's been a sponsor from almost the beginning of our broadcast. Becky helps us with insurance. Becky helps people with Medicare. She helps people in the marketplace. She does life insurance too, and she does dental insurance, hospital indemnity, short-term care policies, and cancer policies. And she says here, did you know that 33% of people will at some point be diagnosed with cancer? Didn't know that. Precision Care, the cancer insurance goes beyond conventional coverage, providing essential cash payments and granting you access to TGen's world-class I can't pronounce the word. Genomic sequencing. This comprehensive approach is designed to enhance your chances of overcoming cancer diagnosis. Call my friend Becky for all your personal insurance needs. She helped me, and she can help you too. Call 541-900-6001. That's 541-900-6001. Becky, I know you're watching. You always do. Thank you so much for your help. And I'm going to have you on here to read your ad one of these days, probably sooner than you know. Also, our friend Andrea Williams from Andrea's Advocare. Spring cleaning isn't just for your home. If you're feeling snappy at your spouse or kids these days, not me, thinking you need a snack all day or to stay awake, crash midday cravings for crappy foods, feeling like you're always bloated or just don't understand or just don't feel like yourself anymore, that's your body talking. It's time for spring cleaning, a gut check. Andrew Williams with Advocare helps you reset from the inside out, starting with a gut health, better nutrition, simple daily habits that last. No crash diets, no extremes. Andrew Williams, Advocare, distributor on Facebook to help you get started. That's healthyhabittribe.org, healthyhabittribe.org. We use the product. It's Andrea's
part
great.
of my diet.
Again, thank you, Andrea.
Little something about Advocare.
Yeah.
It's the only sports supplement that's allowed in all NCAA locker rooms, NFL, Major League Baseball, and NBA.
I did not know that.
As part of the regular training. The rest of them have to go through
Write
us.
that down so you'll know next time.
No, he's gonna read the ad next time.
There you go.
Okay,
Little nerd stuff.
I also want to, of course, I thank Commissioner Freeman for being here, but I also want to thank Commissioner Chris Boyce. Chris actually helps sponsor the program here every month, and thank you, Chris. I know you're feeling a little under the weather tonight, but hope you're doing better. Senator David Brock Smith also is one of our major sponsors, and recently, Looking Glass Brewery.
Right.
Which you see their sign up on the wall.
That's our place.
Mark and Lydia, they are some of the greatest folks I know. They do a fantastic job with beer. I mean, we can talk about beer all night. They're just amazing people, and we thank them. Twin Peaks Off Road, my company, also sponsors this. Little Bill Media, they're the guys behind the scenes making us look tall and lots of hair, not fat. They do a fantastic job, and I really can't do a professional program like this without them. People have tried and failed, and this program's been wildly successful, and they're a large part of the reason why. Also, Spider King Studios works with them as well to help make this thing a success. So I think we've covered our sponsors for tonight.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so I want to, first off, I want to thank Commissioner Freeman for joining us and ask you to please join us again sometime.
I will.
And let's see, we have a question.
So I didn't know if you wanted to mention this or not, but this is something I'm pretty proud about. Some of you will receive in the mail a mailer from Oregon Oregon Taxpayers Association. Taxpayers Association of Oregon. I knew they say it the other way. Taxpayers Association of Oregon. And it really is their voter guide. And they have listed all three of the incumbents, Commissioner Tom Kress, Commissioner Chris Boyce, and Commissioner Tim Freeman, on their voters guide to vote for. This is an organization, of course, in Salem that is a watchdog group. They literally have a watchdog on on a bulldog on their flyer.
These were the folks behind the tax thing that Representative Deal pushed.
Yeah. They pay attention. I was lucky enough when I was in the legislature to receive an award from them. It's one of the awards I have in my office today. I'm pretty proud of.
That's awesome. Real quick, we have another question. Tim, how do we, the county, enforce more harvests so we receive the timber revenue?
So right now, the ONC lands, they have a resource management plan that was signed into record in 2016. That resource management plan calls for a sustained yield harvest on the land base of 205 million board feet a year. Again, it grows 1.2 billion, so it leaves almost a billion board feet. That's under sustained yield. Under one-time harvest, there's another 78 million. Not one of the years that this plan has been going, it's almost 10 years now, have they achieved the sustained yield harvest of that small amount. We're in the process of doing a plan revision, which is a rewrite of the plan. The previous administration was going to do an amendment that would not have got it done. This revision changes the purpose and needs statement to match the ONC Act, and that revision will have a number in it, allowable sales quantity or target, upwards of 1 billion board feet. So that is the first step. Then, of course, the litigation will occur. The Association of ONC Counties, AFRC, DTO, Douglas County will all be involved in that to get through all that. And then, of course, it is getting the sales planned out, getting the staff to do it, contracting with those companies locally that have some capacity to help with that, and start building that that volume again. Again, the millings here, it's all the rest of it has to be built. But the first step is the resource management plan. That has already started in earnest. That is something we asked for. We asked for a new state director to help us with that. We have that. She's fantastic. Talk to her quite often. She calls me very often to sort of update me on what's going on. This summer, mid to late August, the alternatives will be out that'll show some of this. There's some review period. Their goal is by the end of February of 27 to have that plan signed into record. So they're moving very quickly. Took them 5 years to do the last plan. So this revision they're trying to do in a year or just over a year.
So I want to give you a chance to have the last word, but I do also want to say thank you to Tracy Vandola. She just made a comment. I really encourage people to reach out to Tim and the other commissioners if you have concerns, questions. Tim's very open, and you're right. Our commissioners, they will answer your questions. I mean, they answer more of my questions than they probably want to sometimes, but they will.
We're very proud of the work that we do at the county, and we're happy to talk about it. And we realize we can't make everybody happy, but if we're talking about the truth of what we're doing,
right,
there can be discrepancies on how people are interpreting it, but there can be difference of opinions on whether that's what you should have done or not done. And those are all important conversations to have and debate to have. That's part of our system of governance. And I was going to start with this, but I'll finish with it. I've had the chance to go have dinner with 4 different U.S. speakers of the House, and they're all uniquely different. I tell a story about each of them because they're really neat people. The last one was Speaker Johnson, and he started his talk out by saying, this experiment of self-governance we call the United States of America requires everybody to participate. And of course, we participated as elected officials, but the public, when they have a question, instead of believing something they read on social media, don't believe that stuff. Call and ask. Yeah. Find out for sure. And you can still not like our choice on a certain issue or the direction we're going, but at least have the same information we had when we made the decision. Yeah. That's all I ask for. And we want that. The rumor about there's no public input at our meetings. The very first commissioner meeting, Commissioner Boyce and I, the very first one we had the cameras turned back on by our very first meeting. Yeah. They'd been turned off for years. And every meeting since then, the cameras have been on. Every single one, every meeting's had public input, with the exception of a few times when Commissioner Leaf was chair. There have been no time limits. He put some time limits on, but there's no time limits.
I sat through all of that, 16, 17, 18. I know better that the whole comment's garbage. It's just a garbage statement.
But again, they're lying about things that are easy to check. You literally can go to the website and look at tomorrow's agenda, and it'll say, comments and questions.
Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Yes, for sure. Any last comments before we move on to a couple of announcements?
So I want to thank you for stepping up. Very few people know what it means to be an Oregon legislator. There is a small group of people that ever get a chance to do that. Yeah. And you're officially in the Oregon Blue Book, right? That's your claim to fame. You'll be there forever. Your picture and the whole bit. But more importantly, you know what it takes to do it. And most people don't. It means you leave your home and your family and your friends and your business, and you check out here, and you go to Salem, and you check in, and you focus, weeks at a time, and you do that, for 6 months, every other year, and then for a month and a half, and the odd year. But more importantly, the even years when you go up there, but the in between now, your committee hearings, your campaigning, your part of leadership now.
Right.
I was the House Republican whip, so I know the sacrifice that you personally give to do this job, and I want to thank you for it, because I truly know how hard it is. And I know you'll say I love doing it, but I know how difficult it is.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And it's nice to have a great working relationship with our commissioners. And
yes, it is.
I firmly support all 3 of you, and I think the majority of the folks here do. And, I think our local Republican Party, in all of the forums that we've had and all the recent meetings, they pretty clearly support our 3 commissioners. And anyway, Thank you for joining us tonight. It's been amazing. I've learned things tonight. The reason for this podcast has always been and will always be to bring government to the people and help people understand how the government works and what the reality of it is. Social media is one way to look at reality, but the reality of it is we don't lie on this show. This show, or whatever you call it, podcast, this is where the rubber hits the road. We tell the truth, only the truth, and frankly, there's been some times where I've been wrong, and we have gone back and corrected ourselves. I mean, we're not perfect, but we try to bring everybody the most current and accurate information we can. Trent, you've been quiet tonight, but this has really been a learning experience for both of us. So I appreciate that Commissioner Freeman's had a lot to say, but you have some announcements.
I do. First thing, I got to turn the fire hose off that I've been drinking from. I'm just a little waterlogged at the moment. It's every time I get with you guys, it's just the learning curve just goes straight up, and I love it. Couple things. June 27th is our annual Republican fundraiser. We're celebrating 250 years of America. It's a barbecue cookout, Melrose Vineyard. I have sponsored tables left. They're selling out. The president's tables are almost gone. I think I got one left. Vice president's starting to go. There's also individual tickets sales available. Call me, Facebook message me. Call me at 541-580-0615, and we'll get your reservation for tickets, and we'll get them out to you.
So we also have the Umpqua Valley Republican Women's
on Thursday
dinner
night. Yeah,
Thursday, two days from now.
It's sold out.
Oh, is it sold out?
It is completely sold out. Yeah.
I want everybody to know there's been a lot of talk out there about I call him representative because he is a representative still. He's my friend Ed Deal, running for governor. He will be here. I think he's the keynote speaker at the event. We are talking with Ed, and I know Bob Murray has been in touch with him as well. We'll get him back down here again.
We're going to do a free meet and greet with him.
Okay, yeah. Good. I think it's important to do that. Ed's a fantastic guy, great governor candidate, and I know he wants to come back to Douglas County, and I know he will soon. But boy, I tell you, running for governor, these guys are busy. I just spent some time with Ed this weekend, and he had driven 1,350 miles last week in his Jeep. He has a Jeep.
Yeah.
Around the state of Oregon, to the point where he now has a guy that's volunteer driving for him. So they're just going literally from city to city, meeting to meeting. They do some hard work and long days. So anyway, keep in mind that's coming. We'll announce that and we'll keep going.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have anything else.
I just ballots will be in the mail.
Ballots. Yeah.
Ballots are going out tomorrow.
Tomorrow, and if you haven't registered, I think it's no. You got till 8:00.
Oh, maybe on the website.
Yeah, voteoregon.gov. If you haven't registered to vote, go there right now. You cannot, if you're not a registered Republican, you can't vote in the Republican primary.
Yeah.
But you certainly can vote for county commissioner.
But you can vote for county commissioner.
Yes.
Tim Freeman.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to say. Thanks to Tim. I've gotten really to know Tim clear back in 2005 when I helped start the Josh Bidwell Foundation. He was one of the first guys that just said, "I'm in. What can I do to help?" And then for the last 16 years, I've been on the Roseburg Community Cancer Board with him, and it's just to listen to him lead the way. He always asks great questions in our meetings, and that's one of the things that I've learned is I'm learning how to ask good questions, and to people to find out, where they're really at with things, So I'm challenging you guys out there. If you're going to put a question here, make it a good question.
Yeah, and make it lots of them, and keep asking. And you can email us, you can text us, you can whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we're again, I'm a state government guy, but I work closely with our commissioners, and they're very available. So, anything else?
No, that's
Okay.
yeah.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Freeman, any last
Well,
things?
you brought up these organizations. There's a tremendous amount of great organizations in this county doing great things every day. We do all the FFA banquets and things, and there's just an amazing amount of good going on. It's sad to see some of these other candidates just talk so poorly about Douglas County, like it's the worst place in the world. A lot of them just moved here. You wonder, why'd you move here if it's so terrible? I love it here. I love living here. I raised my kids here. My grandkids are getting raised here. There's always more we can do and things we can improve, but this is a wonderful place to live.
Yeah. And Commissioner, you're not wrong. There are so many things that we do on the weekends and in the evenings. I mean, my chief of staff keeps that list for me. I have there. And you guys are there. When I'm there, you're there. We're always there together. Sometimes you guys do more than I do because I got to go do state stuff, but it's amazing. So listen, thank you to everybody who's joined us tonight. It looks like we had a great audience all night.
did.
It's been one of the higher turnout ones. Thank you so much. Again, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. The list goes on, 13 or so different ways to listen to us. Plus Facebook. This stays up on Facebook, I think, for a month before they take it down, but it'll stay up on YouTube forever. And feel free to comment, ask questions, or anything you might want to do. And stay with us and like and follow us and share it with your friends because this will grow. It has been growing. Our reach is over 1 million people in 90 days now. We'd like to see that grow to, heck, I don't know, 4 million people or whatever. I find even this weekend when I was up in Welch's, Oregon, I had, I don't know, at least a half a dozen people come up to me and say, "Hey, I love your podcast. Thank you for what you do. It's nice to hear, the truth coming out." And it's just amazing. And I don't do this for me. I do this for you. We do this for the people. We want government to be something that people understand and not just something that you read on Facebook or X or any of that stuff. So with that, thank you again, Commissioner Freeman, for joining us. Thank you, Trent, for forever being my co-host. You're kind of stuck. You can't leave.
I got a Jeep. What can I say?
You got a Jeep too.
A red one.
Yeah, well, that makes you cool.
I wonder if Ed's is red.
Ed's is black.
Oh.
And I want to thank again Little Mill Media for putting this on and helping us out. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Tuesday. I don't know yet who our guest is going to be. Now we're to the point where we get a lot of people asking to come on as opposed to we used to ask people to come on. So it should be interesting to see who wants to be on next. Thank you all. Have a great night.